Hi, today we will be discussing Lab 1 of Physics 2212, Charged Tapes. In this experiment, we will observe how charged tapes interact with each other and other objects. Figure 1 shows the process of creating the charged tapes. Since all of the tapes will be made using this method, it is reasonable to assume that they all have the same charge evenly distributed over its area. One part of this lab is shown in Figure 2, where tape B is suspended while tape A is brought closer and closer until tape B floats. The primary goal of this experiment is to determine the charge on one of these pieces of tape. Before examining the experiment itself, it is important to understand the fundamental physics principles behind this lab. First, a charged object is either negatively charged with an excess of electrons or positively charged with a deficiency of electrons. Charges produce electric fields that point towards negative charges and away from positive charges. The electric field of one charge interacting with a different charge produces an electric force. For this lab in particular, it is important to remember that gravity exerts a force on all objects. In the second part of this experiment, the electric force from tape A is counteracting the force of gravity on tape B, causing tape B to float. We can derive the amount of charge on a piece of tape by implementing some of the concepts that have just been discussed. The magnitude of the electric force on tape B is equal to the charge on tape B times the magnitude of the electric field of tape A. Assuming that the charges on each tape are equal, the magnitude of the electric force on tape B simplifies to 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught times the charge squared divided by the separation distance squared. When the tape is floating, the magnitude of the electrical and gravitational forces are equal, as discussed in the previous slide. Substituting the expressions for each of these forces and solving for the charge results in the charge on a piece of tape to be the square root of 4 pi epsilon naught times the mass of the tape times acceleration due to gravity times the separation distance squared. Now we will discuss some observations from this lab. It is known that a plastic object, such as this comb, obtains a negative charge when rubbed through hair. When it's brought close to the tape, there's an attractive force. This would mean that the tape has a positive charge since oppositely charged objects attract each other. This part of the experiment is set up as described in Figure 2 shown earlier. As tape A is brought upwards, tape B is repelled until it floats above its original position. The distance to achieve floating is recorded for use in later calculations. Here are the data and results from the experiment. Each piece of tape had a length of 0.21 meters. The mass of the tape is calculated by multiplying the tape's length by its density to give 2.1 times 10 to the negative 4th kilograms. The distance to achieve floating was 0.022 meters. As explained earlier, the tape was found to have a positive charge, or a deficiency of electrons. The magnitude of the gravitational force on tape B is its mass multiplied by acceleration due to gravity, which results in 2.06 times 10 to the negative 3rd newtons. This is also equal to the magnitude of the electric force on tape B, since the forces are balanced. To simulate the forces experienced by tape B, this model was coded using GlowScript. The model is shown on the left and the calculation results are shown on the right. This model approximates the pieces of tape as point charges in order to simplify calculations. The red particle is tape B and the blue particle is tape A, with the orange arrow representing the gravitational force vector of 0, negative 2.058 times 10 to the negative 3rd, 0 newtons, and the green arrow represents the electrical force vector of 0, 2.058 times 10 to the negative 3rd, 0 newtons. This code calculates the charge on each piece of tape to be 1.052 times 10 to the negative 8th coulombs using the equation derived earlier. An E-field function takes in the charge and other parameters to calculate the electric field on tape B. To see the actual code, go to the link in the description below. It is important to avoid touching the charged surface of the tape because it grounds the tape and returns it to neutral charge. This happens because there is a transfer of electrons between the hand and the tape, since the tape is positively charged and the electrons are negatively charged. Additionally, if protons and electrons were to switch charges, nothing would change. Oppositely charged objects would still attract each other, and similarly charged objects would still repel each other.